Perfect. So, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this first 2026 session of the Port webinar series. I'm Julia Marcelino, Head of Membership of the International Association of Port Development, Ports, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today. Ports is a global platform dedicated to fostering innovation, knowledge sharing, and strategic collaboration across the port sector. As the International Association of Port Development, our mission is to connect ports, support their development, and prepare stakeholders to navigate the future of global logistics and maritime trade. This webinar series is one of the tools we use to accomplish our mission, bringing together experts, leaders, and innovators to share insights and practical knowledge. Each session is an opportunity for the global port community to learn, ask questions, and engage in discussions that shape the future of our industry. So today, we are honored to welcome Rogério Saran, Head of Digital Transformation at the Santos Port Authority, Brazil. Saran leads digital transformation initiatives at the Port of Santos, Latin America's largest port. He has been at the forefront of implementing innovative technologies to enhance connectivity, operational efficiency, and smart infrastructure across port operations. He will be speaking about the implementation of private 5G network at the Port of Santos, a key initiative strengthening digital infrastructure and enabling new applications such as IoT, enhanced security systems, and real-time operational monitoring. So feel free to ask questions or interact with us through the chat, and we will open for questions and answers after Saran's presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Saran to start the presentation. Floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity for us to share what the Santos Port is doing to improve operations through digital transformation. That's a kind of nice way to say, but we see it as a really back to basics approach. We want to bring new technology and tell people, nurture that and walk them over the new technologies, ensuring they will be able to adopt it. So 5G is just another, and we have plenty of initiatives we want to see as a reality in the Santos Port. And what we'll show you and how we are dealing with this to make it a feasible initiative and go into real live sound developments in a pace we are able to follow, because we talk about new technology, but we are not really able to absorb and put in practice everything we see and hear about everywhere in the world. So how we will show the presentation. Do you see this?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, thanks, great. So this is a brief overview of what the Santos Port Authority is doing about 5G communications. In fact, the background is we're talking about operational area connectivity. We're talking about communications. Santos, as an organized port, was established 134 years ago. So we passed through different scenarios of communication, from landline telephony to analog radios, computer network, and certainly we have different evolutions over time. 5G is just another step on this, and we are taking this as a part of this bigger communication strategy. The port is evolving naturally towards better ways to coordinate people and keep track of operations and Port Authority duties regarding infrastructure, security, and so on. So our agenda here is to talk about 5G in ports, but get back to real world, basic, and clearly achievable benefits. Because sometimes people talk about, oh, 5G, we could control drones and autonomous vehicles and robots and so on. But that's a reality in new infrastructures, in new ports designed to from off the shelves to work like this. But we are talking about a centenary operation, which is evolving gradually. So we are taking a look at what's going on in the world and translating that to the Santos Port reality, to make it feasible, to make it achievable, and to reach this gradually and put that to work for the Port Authority operations and activities all over the Santos Port, all over the operations area. So what we talk about when we put data communications in spot, we have today lots of data communications structure deployed for operations management. We have mainly several information systems in our IT structure that took care of the administrative tasks, supply, security, and operations. We need to care in the security field, particularly about access control, because the Port Authority oversees ISPS regulated uh, access to all control areas. And we also need to, to rely on data communications for online as it goes reporting of port activities. Just for instance, we have on each one of our 43, 53 terminals, we have our overseeing team taking note on how is operation going, how is loading, unloading, and so on. We have 63 berths and over 15 kilometers of way in the Santos margin and the right margin, and another 11 kilometers in Guarujá margin. So these teams need to coordinate, need to do quick response notifications and alerts regarding operations and regarding security. And that happens from decades. We used to rely on analog radio, to rely on uh, phone landlines, and with the time, we deployed a computer network covering a great deal of the port operations area, and we use this commonly for operations management. In the opposite, we see data communications for data, for bare data, not voice, not people talking. So we talk about real-time data, and we have some censoring spread over the port, but in fact, we don't have that much. We do have a huge CCTV network. We have some sensors, but not that many. And we have some automated controls like computer vision and image processing and some environmental sensoring, but very few for for the current in the current scenario. And all of those were structured with focused limited data communication solutions. So some of them rely on the port fiber optic network. Some of them use dedicated radio. Some of them works standalone. And we don't have until now a way to think data communications globally for the port operations area in an integrated form. So what we do rely on? and talking about common solutions and protocols. We see data communication, and we do have here in the fiber optic network that covers most of continuous operation area in the right margin Santos, and a good deal of it in the left margin Guarujá, because the operational areas are spread. We do have standard twisted pair network, so we have Ethernet in the Port Authority facilities, some large complexes with several buildings, and some of them small posts along the operational area. And Santos is not a port operated by the central management, the Port Authority. We do rely on tenants. The terminals are tenants with contracts to operate those geographical areas and to use the public way for shipping, loading and unloading. So those terminals have their own infrastructure. And what we do have are posts for the port guards, for overseeing personnel in operations, for environment team from the port to check also conformity in the operations. So in those places, we do connect through the port fiber optic network. We have local Ethernet twisted pair network and also Wi-Fi deployed in most of them. So what we do have is a private network cable with radio in the edge through Wi-Fi antennas. We do not have cellular radio in the Port Authority infrastructure. Some of our terminals do operate that. They have LTE or 5G operating for internal controls. And some of them also rely on microwave radio for point-to-point communication. What we do face now is the availability of 5G cellular radio technology, able to support our operations with technology proven by commercial operators. So we have, from the last 30, 35 years, cellular operation in Brazil, cellular providers first with voice communication, then digital voice and messages, then that evolved to low speed edge networks, then 4G, 4G, HSPA, and LTE. And that's common. And we have in Brazil, like in most of the world, widely deployed cellular communication solutions for public service and for personal use like this. What we see now is the opportunity to deploy a network like this for Port Authority operations. So, of course, we are heading directly to 5G because partly it's the most evolved solution, partly because it's technically sound and appropriate for our needs. So I want to talk a little bit about 5G. We hear a lot from advertising, from communications companies, from public communication service, the mobile personal service. And that's also some hopeless, some marketing speech about speed and availability. But here a very short comparison from 4G or LTE to 5G. The key points are the consolidated speed capacity and the amount of device on each station. So typical 4G stations are able to operate from 15 to 100 megabits per second speed with the terminals. And they usually handle about 150 devices per sector. A sector is the area which one of the antennas looks toward, okay? So a 4G antenna usually covers a broad sector, like 120 degrees and or even more. And the antenna is able to support, to maintain connections with about 150 devices. Okay, some providers are able to do more, maybe 300, maybe a broader angle of coverage, but those are typical numbers. So most of the antennas on poles you see, you note there are antennas facing several directions. In the opposite, the 5G supports a lot more traffic. So typical speed from 10 gigabit per second, and each antenna will handle about 1,200 devices per sector. The sector coverage is narrow. So 5G typically will cover from 40 to 60 degrees, maybe. So you need more antennas to cover a whole perimeter. But each one is able to operate with several devices. So this is the first reason we need 5G for operations in an environment like the port. Just to mention an example, I heard about a terminal who do operate LTE for push-to-talk communication, so mobile handheld radio, and also for body cams. But they do operate about 1,500 to 150 or 200 devices. And they are planning to migrate to 5G because they have over 500 cameras spread over the terminal, and they want to get the feed from that camera image data on the radio antenna. So to do that with 4G, they'll need more poles and more stations. With a single 5G station, they will be able to cover all the area. Just need to care about have sufficient number of antennas in the same pole to cover all directions. So 5G support the amount of device we hope to see connected in the port. But why do we seek for a private 5G network? So all of you are probably acquainted with the cellular communication services you have in the device in the pocket. And that's the public service. That's a service designed to operate with subscriber lines, phone numbers for voice communication and data communication, and usually internet access. What we did see in the private 5G networks, go back to what I mentioned, we are looking for an increased infrastructure, a larger infrastructure with more alternatives for port operations to coordinate with data communications. What we do see here, we go from the port or a private company computer network. So we do have, that we see in the left here, our private network, that's fiber optic, Ethernet, and some other communication alternatives. And that network connects computers, servers, some sensors, some mobile equipment through Wi-Fi, but we will expand the coverage through this 5G communication infrastructure. So from the 5G core, we used to mention that as the computers who coordinate all the 5G traffic, and they are connected to the towers with the antennas and the poles with data communication all over. From the 5G core, we will be able to reach devices all over the operation area. So we're talking about tablets, cell phones, cameras, radios, or even specialized devices like drones and sensors. And the Santos Port Authority choose to deploy a standalone 5G network. And what does that mean? That's a network that only operates radio communications on 5G frequencies. What we do see in subscriber commercial networks, they usually adopt non-standard 5G that's designed to work with a 4G core. So the communications company will be able to talk to subscriber terminals, telephones, either using 4 and 5G, and their control channels are routed through 5G. As we are talking about a private network, we can go straight to 5G. We don't need the 4G network for nothing, and we will not deploy that because it would be that would double our costs. Commercial operators do have 3 and 4G networks, so they evolve naturally to non-standard 5G, and we go directly to the simpler model, and that's a way faster and way simpler to maintain network. And what people are doing with that? Just a few samples. Rotterdam in the Netherlands is adopting 5G for several activities. One of the first applications they deployed was a sensor network. They updated sensors, in fact, because they already had some. And they have, I think, about 44 sensors spread over the port for climate conditions sensing and also waterways conditions. In Valencia, in Spain, they invested on security infrastructure. So they have, through the 5G network, cameras either in fixed all over the operation area and also in vehicles, mobile units. And that reinforce their perimeter security in a way like we devised too, that's easier to maintain because we don't need cable connections all around, and we're able to supply that video feeds from vehicles. In network, they have a whole initiative regarding 5G, and they are starting with cameras, autonomous vehicles, and drones. So that's kinda challenging, and also they put a high bar, challenging goal. Well, they already have, for instance, some like tug ships sending communications automatically to the port operations coordination, and also a 5G system communication between vessels to coordinate traffic. So they have a vessel traffic management relying on several technologies, and one of them is also 5G. In Singapore, they have a widely adopted autonomous vehicles for cargo management operation, and they do rely on 5G and GPS and computer communication to operate those vehicles and coordinate their traffic in the port. And Mauen, this is a nice sample in China near Hong Kong. The port was devised to work based on 5G connectivity. So all the port operations were structured to work with the 5G network. That's cranes, vehicles, cameras, monitoring, all of it runs on 5G network. This is a relative new development. They are doing this from the last 5-6 years, if I remember well. But what we do devise here in Santos, we look for real world benefits, because usually come to mind autonomous vehicles and drones and so on. Okay, we will have that sometime in the proper time. All of this will be adopted in every port in the world, and every large operation will take profit of this. What we do see now as the first step and the great benefit for Santos is to support this CCTV network and the computer network, because we do rely on fiber optic, and this fiber optic infrastructure in the port environment is in a hostile condition. We have frequent failures, we have frequent fiber connections are broken, and we need a team to continuously keep up with this and maintain it working. We need to rely on alternate roads. We need to have alternate connections, and that's costly. Will 5G eliminate that? No. But as we spread 5G coverage all over the port, we will be able to have uh, easier to deploy contingents for this. And also, we have some operational scenarios when the computer network could be expanded quickly in remote areas through the 5G network. So that's to have a sample. We were talking about some monitoring equipment in specific terminal in Santos, and we are wondering about a proof of concept to deploy it through 5G, because we don't need to expand on costly engineering, uh, building, and planning to deploy fiber optic to reach all the points. So 5G will make easier to expand connectivity. So we don't rely on it only for last mile to reach the terminal which is in the hands of the operator. As I mentioned last mile, we usually think about 5G and cellular networks as a way to reach a mobile device, but don't need to be so. Because in an industrial environment and the port infrastructure in particular, we have applications who will perfectly work with wired devices through 5G. So what we do expect is to be able, for example, let's see, we need to expand CCTV in a particularly difficult place to be reached, because we don't have infrastructure, because we have waterways, because uh, we would need to do a costly building and excavations and cable passing and so on to make that possible. So we could deploy a 5G router and operate a remote local network cable with standard cameras. So we don't need to buy specialized 5G cameras or 5G devices. We could work with the stuff we already have. So the philosophy here is to be able to grow our infrastructure and several small steps and gradually taking profit of 5G connectivity as we deploy the network all over the port. And to take profit of this, we don't need the network everywhere. We won't have the network everywhere, in fact, because we have to implement several radio stations along the port operations. So as we gradually deploy those 5G stations, we are able to take profit of the network immediately in those sectors. So I mentioned about the Santos Port operations area, and in this drawing, this map, you see it marked in red and yellow. What we expect to do is cover it gradually. So we first reach the regulatory licensing for this, and we have the authorization to operate the N78 frequency in the whole port perimeter. But we will not cover that in all of the same time. We do that in steps. We have an initial network in construction that will cover first 3 points. The Port Central complex, the headquarters, that's a large complex with several buildings and several other. We have data centers, we have administrative stuff, we have operational stuff. We'll cover the historical way where the port started. That's a neighborhood in Santos called Valongo. And we'll cover an port operations station in the port entrance. So you see, three stations cover a small part of all operational areas. But as we deploy these, we will start to have coverage in the neighborhood areas, covering about 700 meters, 1 kilometer to each side. And that's the first step for uh, stepwise cadence deployment. Then we will start deploying more stations to support the authority operations in those areas. So security, operations overseeing, environment overseeing, and so on. We didn't have, we already had some technical trials on this. We deployed uh, a real functioning 5G station in the port entrance, in that station in the port entrance. And there we had some tests with several video collection scenarios. Even the port president is here. He showed very uh, sophisticated and data consuming camera device operating flawlessly in the 5G. We put several cameras in the area, extending video CCTV coverage easily with the 5G. And also, we did these trials because once you expand the port monitoring CCTV network, we have about 1,000 own cameras. A fraction of this is under deployment now, but we will reach this number soon. And 300 shared cameras because the terminals produce video feeds for us. What's the problem with this? We need to improve and enlarge the video coverage, but to do so, we need physical connections. So with 5G stations, we'll be able to spread camera coverage easily. And also, we have plans to deploy mobile radio communication. We do have digital radio today, several teams in the port operate with that. But what I expect to do is to evolve to the next step, to have push-to-talk 5G radios with voice, pictures, and live video. Because when you have our people overseeing operations, frequently they see incidents that need attention. And what they do rely now is on standard cell phones, or they are not able to record that depending on the area. Some areas are sensitive and they are not allowed to operate standard device. So we expect to have digital data coverage, to have a central coordination team immediately receiving those images and scenarios and able to coordinate quickly and mobilize more people and have the right scenario in their hands quickly. So those two simple scenarios, CCTV and radio communication, are the main goals we hope to achieve and get profits from the 5G network. Of course, we have plans for sensors, for environmental sensors, for drones, for vehicles, and so on. But those are new technologies. They will not be widely deployed and spread over the port. But video surveillance and people communicating, that we have all over the operational area, and we hope to take profit of 5G with this really soon, we hope. So how do we move on? We are deploying this preliminary network, and we will plan the expansion according to the operational demand. We have demands in several aspects. We have demand on overseeing operations, on censoring, on new devices and new technologies, trials eventually of those, or deploying specific solutions over the port. So what we hope to do is we have 3 stations and we start covering the port, prioritizing where the Port Authority and operations will have more benefits from the initiative. So I give you this brief picture, and I invite you to put your questions. Julia, would you coordinate that for us?
Sure. Thank you so much, Rogério, for this incredible presentation. That was disruptive. So yeah, let's open the floor for questions. Would anyone like to open their cameras or microphones and ask Rogério a question? Feel free to also use the chat if you would like. Yeah.
Yes, if I might.
Edgar?
Okay. Thanks very much, Rogério, for sharing this. Indeed, I want to see that in your ports. It's
Please.
amazing technology that you are deploying there. And my question is in regard of what are the challenges you face from the technical and business side to move forward with this project?
The technical side, we're talking about wide deployed technology. So we're not inventing nothing really new. But I think the technical challenge is to propose a sound, a reasonable deployment schedule, because those are not really inexpensive stuff. You need some investment with the base stations, and you need a lot of heavy infrastructure related to that. We think about the stations, the radio stations, antennas, but we are deploying now about 20 kilometers of fiber optic channels to support them. We have to excavate 4 kilometers way area to do so, because some of the areas we have constraints to use current connections. So you have to invest on this, and you need to propose a sound, a smart way to grow the network and taking benefits before it's all over the operational area. We have some areas we need to do a huge investment on data communications to put the radio station operating. So I think the strategy is the main point. Of course, there are investments, but you need to make sure you get benefits as soon as possible.
Thanks very much, Rogério. And just one,
Please.
the last one from my side is the knowledge, the technical knowledge to implement this kind of technology was through an external partner, or you needed to build the expertise in your team?
Great question, Ricardo. We rely on a research institute in Brazil. This institute, the Itaipu Architect Institute, was created by a government venture. The Itaipu Binacional is the largest Brazilian hydroelectric generator. It's a company owned by the Brazilian and Paraguayan government. And they do develop, they create a research institute, and they work in the past 10 years providing 5G and data communications solutions from that hydroelectric generation unit. So that's a huge infrastructure there. That's a more than 10-kilometer dam. That is about 40-kilometer 40-kilometer perimeter. So they rely on digital data communications to coordinate operations. So that's a very similar conditions we do have here in lots of aspects. So this institute had that experience, and they lecture us on how to specify the proper equipment, and they are overseeing the deployment of these 3 preliminary stations. What we hope to achieve will be a guideline, a template for the next ones. So we have as specifications, what the equipment needs we look for. So to add stations, to add radio coverage, we will follow this preliminary network, which was aimed and engineered with this team.
Okay, thanks very much, Rogério.
Thank
Excelente.
you. Anyone else?
Wonderful. Does anyone else would like to ask Rogério a question? Okay.
Jairo, please.
Yeah, Rogelio, thank you so much for the great presentation. I was wondering about, from your experience with 5G deployments in port, what are the typical investment payback horizons? And what KPIs or metrics are the most effective to demonstrate value to investors?
Jairo, that's a great point. And we see here in a particular way, because we do not operate properly. We are a port authority, we oversee operations, and we have the responsibility to keep infrastructure and security in the adequate levels for the operators. So we're not really doing an analysis on a direct return of the investment, because we're not, like, for instance, comparing this with another network. What we do see is we choose between alternative connectivity solutions to cover all the operational areas. So what we do have, like for instance, we have some areas in the where the port is growing when we don't have fiber optic coverage. So the investment trade here is to compare the cost to deploy fiber optic all over those areas and to deploy 5G and lead sectors with radio connectivity. So we're not talking about how better would be the operation, because we're not operating ship loaders or cranes or other loading equipment, but we do have alternatives on infrastructure, on which infrastructure to invest first. So what we do, as we have a strategy to grow in steps, each key benefit we see, like say, let's have radio coverage or outpost connectivity in a key area in the port. And we compare with the cost of doing standard cabling and deployment. Just for instance, to deploy a 5G station and connect it in the scale like we have here, we are spending about the same order, the same amount for one station, and for the cabling we are spending and deploying for this, because excavations and fiber optic mileage and so on. So the point here is, if I need to connect 200 new cameras, probably the cabling cost will be in the same dimension as a share of one of the 5G stations coverage. So that's the trade we are evaluating on each step we're doing here.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. Would anyone else like to ask a question? We still have a few more minutes. Well, I was just wondering, Rogério,
Okay.
assuming that this is the future of port operations, I'm wondering what advice would you give for ports who are looking to invest in the deployment of a 5G network? Yeah.
Julia, I would say not even particularly 5G. Go through easy, small steps. So you could grow up data communication solutions, but try to devise a way to do so in compartments, in small building blocks, because this kind of infrastructure is expensive and we won't be able to collect the benefit all at once. You do so if you already have the network, but take some time to do so. So, for instance, Valencia operates 15 radio stations. So we were starting here with 3. Santos will probably need about 15, 20. So, oh, you have a partial network. Okay, but we have a plan to take profit of this as soon as possible. So if you measure steps and make sure you collect benefits on each investment, on each infrastructure you deploy, I think this is a sober way to do so. And we're not trying to supply an alternative to public data communication service and not subscriber service. We don't have the challenge to offer it everywhere, every time to everyone. What we do want to is to have a better backbone, a better infrastructure. And as we deploy this, we have better coverage and higher service levels on each area we start to cover. So this is stepwise approach, I think would be our first recommendation or best recommendation, because even if you are able to evolve just a little bit, we will collect the gains. So that's the guideline we adopted here.
Yeah, it seems like not only is the sober way to do it, but also the sustainable way. I mean, long-term speaking.
Sure, yeah, because 5G is just the way we do now, and 3, 5, 6 years from now, there will be another solution, and we will just take profit of the better technology and better means that are available, and the whole plan, what guides this, what drives this, don't change. Okay, so we have today fiber optic network, but in the past we had analog phone landlines, maybe 50 years ago. So in the future, we have several new alternatives. Today we see, for instance, satellite communications, and those were heavy investment intensive and hard to see, and now you see it everywhere, and people are using this on personal device. So probably in the future we'll be able to rely on this too. So 5G is not the goal. The goal is to have port communications growing and supporting better service levels and in a continuous way.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Last call. Would anyone like to ask Rogério a question? Either through the chat or by opening the microphone. If not,
I'd like to ask.
go
Hi,
ahead.
John.
Yeah, sure. I was thinking based on the question and the previous question, if a port were starting a private 5G deployment or any other generation in the future, today, what would you do differently compared to the previous technologies?
Jairo, I think we are in too early stage to have that conclusion. I would like to have them.
O sea,
But
si quiero sacar,
we are
exportar y
still in the first steps.
ahí está, ese es
So
formato
let's
que
say we propose the first approach, and we are about in this year to start to gauge the gains, to check if we move in the right direction. So I can't say we would do differently for this initiative in particular. What I would say we could have done in the past, but that's easier said than done. We could have wider investment in the data communications basic infrastructure. But again, easier said than done, because to do excavation and cabling and infrastructure and towers and all of that to support the port operations, you were not really able to anticipate that in decades before. Okay, we have, for instance, our main truck highway along the quay in the Santos area was built in the current configuration about 45 years ago. So at that time, could be wider, could have areas for shafts, for cabling and so on. But who would think 4 or 5 years ago we would need that? So it's easy to look at this in the past, but it's hard to anticipate the needs. So I would say to you, Jairo, in 6 months to a year, we will be able to answer your question. I'm eager to discover about how should we steer this to collect more benefits.
Cool. Thank you, Rogério.
So I would add, if you have more questions, please feel free to contact iPorts or us at the Port Authority. Okay, you have my email in the slide, and Julia will be able to put you all in contact with us as well easily. Okay, will be a pleasure to give you more information and to show the project and gather insights about it from you as well.
That is wonderful. Thank you, Rogério. For the benefit of the time, well, we would like to thank everyone who joined us today. We truly appreciate your time and engagement. And a special thank you to Rogério Saran, the Santos Port Authority Port member, for sharing this really great initiative with the Port community. And before we close, yes, Michael, tell us.
No, I'm sorry. I'm good. I just wanted to say thanks a lot for the presentation. It's fantastic.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for always supporting us, Michael. So yeah, before we close, I would just like to highlight a major airports initiative. So yeah, the Airports Investment Round 2026 will be hosted on April 13th in São Paulo at the Brazilian Stock Exchange B3. That's the 4th largest stock exchange in the world. The event will happen one day before Intermodal South America. That creates a unique moment for global community together in Brazil. We expect around 250 participants, including port leaders, port and terminal operators, development banks, private banks, venture capital firms, startups, industry leaders, and international delegations. This is designed as a high-level curated gathering, and participation is by invitation only, ensuring a high-level strategic environment for meaningful dialogue, partnerships, and investment discussions in the port sector. So if you're interested in learning more or requesting participation to the event, we will share the information, the registration link in the chat, and we would be delighted to welcome many of you in São Paulo. Together, we are shaping the future of ports. Ports, connecting ports, navigating the future. Thank you all for coming. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Julia.
Thanks.
Thank you for the
Bye-bye.
opportunity.